Amidst concern that the fast ferry between South Florida and Resorts World Bimini has been discontinued, Tourism Minister Obi Wolshcom is today clarifying the issue. He says while the service of one vessel was terminated, hotel officials plan to continue to use the docking facility to accommodate a smaller vessel and facilitate more airlift to the island. Back in 2014, environmentalists protested against the construction of the pier to facilitate the cruise liner. A court order even halted work on the pier for about a week, but the ban was later lifted. Wolshcom said despite concerns over the pier, that the use of the pier will continue for the resort and the wider community. We'll keep you up to date on that story.
The vessel is going to dry dock, following which they expect to introduce a new vessel that will be much smaller. They have, of course, noted that some issues arise with the larger vessel, one of which is crossing over because of the sea balance and difficulties they're having, the weather conditions, and of course heavy cost. Because if you're not running the vessel as regularly as you should, it's going to be a heavy cost to the company. So they have spoken with us, and they intend to now introduce a smaller vessel that will certainly carry the business that we expect to continue to develop.
In the aftermath of Hurricane Joaquin, training of the core group of National Emergency Management Agency officials is continuing. A week-long damage assessment and needs analysis workshop is being sponsored by the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, SEDEMA, headquartered in Barbados. The training incorporates principles and concepts which examine the immediate response in the aftermath of a storm to put in place improved response mechanisms. Director of NEMA, Captain Stephen Russell, is embracing the workshop as training, he says, should always be ongoing. And in the aftermath of Hurricane Joaquin, which devastated the southern and central islands of the Bahamas, Captain Russell says there were many lessons to be learned.
We found where a number of our islands that were impacted during this last hurricane were overwhelmed in terms of the local disaster committees in the islands, the local councils in the islands, everything, they were overwhelmed. So we need now to see how we can further strengthen those islands if they're impacted. We need to send full teams in there to relieve the council members, the local disaster committees, and even some administrators of the burden, because they would have gone through the trauma, and we expect them to likewise respond to the event, and that can be overwhelming to many persons in an impact area. So we hope to improve on that moving forward.
Now, the training comes just 4 months following Hurricane Joaquin and 5 months ahead of the 2016 hurricane season, which begins June 1st. Joanne Prasad is the program manager of preparedness and response at SEDEMA. She was on the ground in some of the islands in the aftermath of Joaquin and notes that the training course is extremely important as the proper response is crucial.
Taking it to household, to human needs, to sectoral assessments, and by sectoral I mean critical utilities, the health sector, the infrastructure, all the sectors that are impacted, and then bringing that type of data and information that's collected towards a macroeconomic assessment overall. Post-impact of any particular hazard. We give full kudos to the National Emergency Management Agency and Captain Russell for the work that had been done prior to impact and during impact and even after impact. A lot of emphasis was placed on coordination.
Parents of students at the Inagua All-Age School, with the exception of 10th grade students, refused to show up for school today. It's the second time in just 2 weeks. This after parents claim that they've been without a grade 2 teacher since last year. The parents say that early childhood development is crucial, and these children will be required to sit GLAD examinations next year. Now, the parents, in a statement, questioned how the students will be able to catch up with the curriculum. The sit-out, they added, will continue until they get results. The Minister of Education, Jerome Fitzgerald, noted that it was difficult finding teachers for islands like Inagua, which are considered hardship islands. He did, however, say that education was working to have a teacher sent to the school. The minister added that there are a number of teacher shortages in various districts, but education officials have to wait for new teachers to be vetted by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. Former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham will lead a Commonwealth Observer Group to Vanuatu for its general elections on January 22nd. The snap election is being held 9 months ahead of schedule following a period of political instability in which 14 members of parliament were convicted of bribery. The convictions led to a political deadlock between the government and opposition there, which prompted President Baldwin Lonsdale to dissolve the parliament. The Commonwealth's Secretary General Kamalesh Sharma mobilized the Observer Group at the invitation of the government. He said its work would complement the Commonwealth's ongoing effort to support democracy in the country. The Observer Group will offer practical recommendations to strengthen the electoral process there based on observations. The 5-member team will examine pre-election preparedness, voting and counting procedures, and the announcements of results. They'll assess any factors affecting the credibility of the elections and determine whether they were conducted according to international standards and the laws of the country. The observers, supported by a 4-member team, will arrive in the country on January 13th and leave 5 days after the elections are held. Now, the country celebrated the Majority Rule holiday for the 3rd time this year, marking the date 49 years ago when the Progressive Liberal Party, after securing the tie-breaking votes of Sir Randall Fox and Alvin Brennan, won the government by a 20 to 18-seat margin, placing governance in the hands of the majority black populace for the very first time. Foreign Affairs and Immigration Minister Fred Mitchell says despite this feat that saw power taken from the United Bahamian Party being celebrated as a significant accomplishment for all Bahamians, there's still reluctance by some to acknowledge the historical event due to political loyalties.
Let's get over this, right? We were involved. Everybody was PLP prior to 67. Well, most people were PLP who were of African descent prior to 1967. The divisions came afterwards. We're not talking about the divisions. In fact, what happened in 1967 made it possible for everybody to have those divisions afterwards and to be their own person. So that was part of the struggle. But at least you can recognize the fact of what happened, the history of what happened. That's all. We're not saying that you have, because you say that you're PLP today, that doesn't mean that at all. You can be whatever you want to be. In fact, that's what 1967 was about.
Mitchell, who was a guest on Darrell Miller Live, says many Bahamians struggled for the rights that young Bahamians enjoy today. Still, he says, the battle isn't over, and it's now up to today's generation to determine what they're willing to fight for.
There's still a fight for human justice. There's still a fight for dignity. There's still a fight for equality. There's still a fight for economic empowerment. There's still a fight for constitutional change. It doesn't stop. It's not a destination. It's a journey, and we're still on the journey. As long as we're alive, we're on that journey. And so the men and women who did this prior to 1967, I hope, inspires young people today to fight for what they want.
It's time now for our weekly poll presented by Paradise Games, and we want to hear from you on a question posed on Mondays with the results revealed on Fridays. This week's poll question is Majority Rule significant to you? How do you feel about this? The choices are yes, no, or no opinion. You can log on to our website, www.znsbahamas.com, and vote in the poll. The results will be made public on Friday.